Hunger is the great equalizer of mankind. It doesn't care if you spent your days toiling in an oil field or in a high rise air conditioned suite sending emails back and forth. Eventually, everyone must surrender to fatigue and hunger. The movies The Menu and What You Wish For both explore what happens when appetite becomes indulgence and indulgence becomes perverse and destructive. The Menu is the more well known of the two films, and for good reason, but if you watched The Menu and enjoyed it, I can all but bet my life on the fact that you will also enjoy What You Wish For. And if you don't, you can come back to this video, leave a thumbs down, leave a comment, and I promise you, I'm going to feel very terrible about personally letting you down with a recommendation you didn't like. What You Wish For is funny, it's violent, it's thrilling, it has a similar backdrop of high-class catering, but it's a little bit slower paced and more subtle in its imagery and its themes. If that's all you needed for a recommendation, then pause this, go watch What You Wish For, and come back when you're done. But if you need a little bit more convincing, I'm going to discuss What You Wish For in more detail later on in this video. But first, we're going to talk about The Menu. And to do that, we're going to call on a personal friend of the channel, my new favorite plump lolcow, The Barking Years, because he had a take on this movie that's overall very positive. But you know when someone likes the same thing you like, but they're liking it wrong? That's how I'm feeling about this video.
Slowik's restaurant represents the absolute height of this decadent culture, where food itself has been corrupted. Now, among these patrons, it is appreciated for the pleasure it can provide to the senses, and even worse, the exclusivity that results from its price, rather than its nutritional life-giving properties. One thing that sets the menu apart is its refusal to go for the cheap shots. Through a series of conversations with Slowik, it's revealed that Margot is actually an escort, and has, as a matter of pure chance, served one of Slowik's other guests, an elderly married man, and he had disturbed her. One imagines that what will come next is some grotesque story like those told by Sarah in Leaving Las Vegas, but what is described is both less grotesque and more disturbing. He had requested that Margot pretend to be his daughter and watch him masturbate while telling him that she loved him and that he was a good man and a good father. Yikes. Another movie might have leaned into this perverse story, but Slowik interrupts her to joke, "So he was a romantic," and then explains that he doesn't need to hear the details. The point is not to tantalize the audience, the point is the brokenness and psychological compartmentalization.
Tantalize is the verb we go with right there. Are we tantalize is what you wrote in the script. You meant to say tantalize. That not provoke, not discuss, not revolt the audience. Not to be, shock jockey-esque. Nothing like tantalize. And it's not that the character doesn't want to make her relive that event, more than she already has, having been in close proximity to the guy for many hours at this point.
Around his wife when he's in the presence of someone who has seen him do this. This same circumspection is shown in the handling of the social themes. This is not some eat-the-rich revenge fantasy, even though it does occasionally devolve into that. Instead, the critique is more sophisticated and more damning. This is not a movie about class conflict, really. It's about caste conflict, and that is a very different thing. Slowik's diners
that's the same shit.
Are wealthy, for sure, but that's not the real issue. I think you'd have to be a little bit naive to believe that Slowik himself isn't pretty well off, and the same should be said about the people who made this movie.
The difference is that Slowik is a rags to riches story. He wasn't born into money, and that's what fuels his contempt for these elites that have been elites for their entire lives. Like that food critic. Do you think that food critic wasn't born rich, or those finance guys? And that's why he specifically targets the actor, because he sees himself as a peer, someone who made their way up through their craft. But that guy sold out and he didn't, and that's why he feels a sense of superiority towards him.
The Hollywood crowd has some pretty deep pockets, and I don't even need to look up the numbers to tell you that this cast does not come cheap. These people are not going to cast themselves as the villains in one of their cultural products. The more significant fact about Slowik's...
Also, yes, they will. Yes, they will. That's the new thing. And this did come out a few years ago, so I'll give a little bit of good faith, where it's due. But that's a normal thing now. There's a lot of eat the rich kind of movies now. You have The Running Man. You have what was that? Like Don't Blink or Blink Twice or some shit like that. You have like what I don't know, the other plane crash. I don't know what the fuck it is. I'm not gonna watch it. It kind of looks shit, but
is that they are elites. Now, in recent years, this word has become politically charged, but before that, just about everybody interested in sociology used it and recognized its validity. If you'd like to know more about this,
I love how he says the word elite has become politically charged when people having too much influence has just been that's been the problem for that's politics. That's just how it is, you know, kings and lords and dukes and the bourgeoisie and oligarchs, you know, it's just kind of all fucking recycling. It means the same thing.
Recommend researching Edward Bernays, the nephew of Sigmund Freud, who pioneered the field of public relations, which is essentially the use of mass media to affect popular opinion. Institutions are the guiding hand behind any society, and elites are those who sit at the top of those institutions. However, this does not mean that they are some Illuminati-esque cabal of string-pulling masterminds. They're simply another demographic group. Obviously, they are not monolithic, and they have various internal conflicts and differences of opinion, but on the whole, they are largely responsible for the shape that society takes. They are the leaders and vision makers responsible for producing the motivating ideals that serve as a lodestar for the rest of society. When the vision produced by elites is a good one, society functions pretty harmoniously, each demographic more.
So in his eyes, cultural hegemony is just a good thing. Because, you know, that's what he's describing, you know, in fewer words, cultural hegemony. And, like, that's such a bootlicker fucking take. That's nasty. That's so pathetic, dude. Oh my god. I don't have anything to say about that.
Less satisfied with their role in this vision, and each individual more or less content with the life that is available to him by it. The menu explores what happens when the vision of the elites and the culture.
So actually, when rich people and a small minority has a lot of power, they're not a cabal. They're actually just, you know, just a bunch of people who have disagreements and have little fights sometimes. But, you know, they make everything and they make the world so that's good, and everyone below them is happy with what they have and what they've done.
Cultural institutions that they have crafted become defunct. The elites in this room are not somehow the main elites or anything like that. They are simply members of this caste, and not particularly high-ranking ones either. Leguizamo's character is something of a relative loser in this world, a has-been, but he's still a member of this class, even if a low-ranking one. In the chicken taco scene, Slowik provides his guests with soft tacos, and on these tacos he has also provided evidence of their corruption. The tech bros have their hands in the financial cookie jar. The older man has been having affairs with prostitutes that resemble his daughter. The food critic has abused her power and destroyed people's dreams to satisfy her vanity. And Leguizamo's crime is that he claims to be an artist, but he produces trash like Dr. Sunday, which is presumed to represent all the various consumerist slop produced by Hollywood in any given year. The point that Slowik is making here is not that his guests are bad people, it's that they are unworthy.
I think this guy is digging a point out of thin air. You know, he is messing with them because they are rich enough to be despicable and despisable, but not rich enough to be untouchable. You know, because their boss, the guy that all of them, you know, are in business with, he doesn't bother sitting them down and trying to teach them anything and give them an experience or, you know, torture them if you want to think about it like that. He just drowns the dude and, you know, fucking goes on with it. And I had a decidedly different take on this movie where I saw it as him using their gluttony as a way to punish them for their other sins. You know, he's using their gluttony to punish their pride and their ego and their lust. You know, adultery, their perversions, their, you know, he's drawing them in with, you know, their indulgence, and then he's punishing them for their indulgence in other facets. And obviously it's specific for each character, but yeah, anyway.
They are dissolute and their vision is corrupt, hollow, and self-serving. This is contrasted with the extreme devotion to their craft shown by Slowik and his chefs. The crime that Slowik wishes to avenge is that these elites have polluted and destroyed the purity of his dream. This theme of corruption and brokenness is echoed in the scene in which Slowik introduces one of the dishes, the mess. The name is meant to refer to the mess that so many of them have made of their lives through their efforts to climb the ladder of the status hierarchy. The dish is the creation of the young sous chef Jeremy, who has ruined himself in following in the footsteps of Slowik, and has realized the ultimate hollowness of that goal. But it is too late to go back, and Jeremy ends his life in front of the guests, some of whom are so deeply submerged in hyperreality that they believe they are only watching an act. Others realize the danger and attempt to escape, but their attempts are so lacking that they do not even rise to the level of physically attacking their captors. When one suggests that they take their steak knives and make a break for it, the other responds, "You think we have better knife skills than them?" And like that, the idea is dropped. The outcome is uncertain, and being hurt is likely, so why bother? In 2003, Aaron Ralston was canyoneering in the Utah desert when a boulder fell on his. Reason that they have tried so little to escape is because they too despise what they have become. The movie transcends the usual class complaints by showing its awareness of all the parties' mutual complicity. Whatever this system is, it has grown beyond the control of its creators. It is something less, but also more than human. This defunct collection of elites is contrasted with Slowik and his chefs, who demonstrates the nature of a true elite, even if he seems insane to outsiders. Though his realm is very small, he is so loved by his chefs that they are willing to die for him. His vision is profound, powerful, and motivating.
He's loved by all of them. Unanimously. None of them have any gripes with at all. None of them have any problems with him at all. The barking ears misses that Julian is no better than the clientele he serves, and he punishes himself for that in a scene that is not easy to find clips of online, so he could be forgiven for forgetting about this part, if not for the fact that he has a pattern of ignoring scenes like this when they pop up. A female chef is brought forward, and she tells the crowd that Julian had sexually harassed her on multiple occasions, and instead of firing her when she refused his advances, he keeps her on board and just ignores her existence for months. She then takes a pair of scissors and stabs him in what appears to be his groin, but is actually just his upper thigh. In a later scene, she is sobbing at a table with other women, but she does not go into the matter any further, which could suggest that her saying that he tried to sleep with her and she rejected his advances is more sinister, and she's putting it softer than what the reality really is. One could interpret this scene as Julian owning up for his misconduct, but another interpretation could be that this is all performative. He's allowing her to expose him in front of a bunch of patrons that are not going to live to see the sunrise. He's allowing her to take her frustrations out and to punish him in a way that is going to be meaningless in just a couple of hours when they're all dead. Julian betrays the trust of his chefs. He abuses his position of power to prey on a younger woman, and in letting all of this be exposed to his patrons who he does not think highly of, he is showing that he knows he is not better than them. I hate to agree with Barking Ears in any way, but I'm just adding on to his point that he is unworthy as well. He doesn't deserve the status that he has accrued for himself. Anyway, back to What You Wish For, because I think it's an incredible movie. I think more people need to watch it. And with the menu, you have the iconic foreign-born celebrity chef who's very hot-tempered and maybe egotistical. And that's iconic. That's really funny. But with What You Wish For, you have a more relatable line cook. You know, he's broke. He's in debt to some bad people. He drinks too much. I think if you've worked in a restaurant for any amount of time, you've probably met someone like this, or you are someone like this, no offense. Just like Anya Taylor-Joy's character in The Menu, our main character gives us a chance to look at this ultra-wealthy, decadent lifestyle through the lens of someone that's just normal, just a working-class person. And the movie starts out with him reuniting with an old chef friend of his who's now living in South America and has an inexplicable amount of new wealth. And he asks him about this, and his friend says, oh, you know, you run into some opportunities, this and that happens, and poof, you're rich just like that. Obviously, he's very skeptical of this, but he's known this guy forever. They used to work in kitchens together back in the day. He has no reason to be immediately distrustful of him. What's more important is the fact that he's very jealous of him, and for good reason. They go to this dive bar, and his friend starts chatting up this tourist girl. And he has all the swag and confidence of someone who is a young, wealthy, international chef. He's left to stew about his jealousy while he's looking at his negative bank account, thinking about all the debts he owes, while his friend, who worked the same job he did a few years ago, is busy fucking some girl in the master bedroom of his mansion. And this girl only wants to sleep with him because of how rich he is. It's understandable that he wants what his friend has until he realizes exactly how he got it. I can't really talk more about the movie without getting into spoilers, so spoiler warning for what you wish for. But after the tourist girl leaves the house, he finds his friend hanging from the ceiling with a suicide note that presumably explains the nature of his work and how he got all this money, which is by crafting these elegant, high culinary art meals out of human flesh for these high value cannibal clients. And the reason he lives in Mexico is so that people can fly out to his house and he can serve them there without having to deal with all this international traveling. So our protagonist is left with a very awkward but pretty simple choice. Does he ignore that his friend just killed himself, book an early flight back, maybe a hotel for a couple days, and just bounce and forget he ever fucking saw that? Or does he, because he's a master chef as well, just fucking cut him down and take his job, read up on what he's about to be cooking for these people, and get paid like $500,000 in one night? There's something to be said for the fact that to get ahead in this way, he has to be willing to step over people, quite literally, to view people as a currency. He has to find someone to cook and eat for these people. He has to view humans as fuel, as a commodity. I'm trying my best not to make this a full leftist political rant, but it's just so irritating to watch someone watch a clever Eat the Rich movie and come out with the idea of, actually, when rich people make all the rules and dictate the culture, it's actually a really good thing. But when they start sucking toes, the economy crashes and it ruins the culture. Like, it just... What I love about this movie and what distinguishes it from The Menu is the fact that these clientele are not meant to be sympathetic in any way, but we do get into their heads and they explain their rationale on how all of this is above board, how all this is ethical. What's explained to us is that all of these clientele that come to eat human flesh are all executives or owners of companies that have a negative carbon footprint, that help humanity survive in a roundabout way. Therefore, in their minds, what's wrong with them eating people? If we have Chevron and Texaco poisoning people, destroying ecosystems, and we are part of the solution, why can't we fucking eat people? Which is just hilariously fucking insane, but it's not really meant to be reasoned with at all. That's not the point. The other thing is that it goes into great detail to show why it sucks to get rich working for wealthy people, and why his friend saw no other way out but to fucking hang himself. At the end of the movie, our main character is sitting at an airport drinking a beer and is explaining that, yeah, I'm traveling for work, to some stranger. And the stranger asks him, yeah, what do you do? And he says, I go to these luxurious locations and I cook food for these clientele that are paying tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars just to get a seat at the table. And the guy, of course, is very jealous of him, says, wow, you're so lucky, all this stuff, I would love to do that. And he simply says, hey, it's not all it's cracked up to be.